Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Holly and you are watching Clinical Psychology Community UK. And this is the first in a new series. This is 5 top tips where I'll be covering lots of different subjects and giving you some top tips that I've learned along my journey and some tips that I've been given. So today is getting the most out of your support worker role. While I'm currently an assistant psychologist within the NHS, it took me 4 years post graduation to get an assistant job. I suppose 5 if you include my master's year. And in that time, I was a support worker. So I worked in an NHS weight management service as a support worker for a year, which was fantastic. It was a really good place to start developing some of my skills and some of my, professional skills and understanding of things. And then I went on to be a recovery worker for 8 months, which is kind of like a support worker when you're working with people with opiate and alcohol dependency issues. So I did that for 8 months. Then I became a senior recovery worker, so like a senior support worker, and I did that for 18 months. So that's my experience being a support worker. And I have only just in this job now, where I've got supervision with a psychologist and where I've started to learn some of the things that I need to do to get the most out of my experience. Only now have I started getting most out of my experience. So hopefully these tips will help you get a bit of a head start and get the most out of your support worker role. So firstly, ask for supervision. Ask for supervision. Ask for supervision. This has been a constant issue in my career. I think in my first role, I wasn't really aware of the benefit of having supervision with a psychologist. I knew it's something that I needed, but I thought that it's something that only assistant psychologists could get because it's sort of prescribed into that job role, is that you are supervised by a clinical psychologist. Whereas as a support worker, quite often you won't be line managed or supervised by a psychologist because they'll be supervising assistants and trainees and therapists generally. But you will likely be working in a team with psychologists. If you're working in mental health, you will most likely be working in some way, directly or indirectly, with psychologists. So, speak to your line manager. Ask for supervision from that clinical psychologist, ideally. And be honest with your line manager about what your career goals are and why you need that. You can use your PDR, your personal development review, or your annual review to do that, or any line management sessions that you have. Basically, be really honest. And I've been honest since the start. In all of my jobs, I've always said, I want to be a clinical psychologist. I want to get lots of different experiences, and I want to have supervision. It's not always been possible. In fact, it's why I left my last job. If they'd offered, I asked for clinical supervision, and they said that they weren't able to provide that to fairly across the service. So therefore, I needed to go and find a job which was supervised by a psychologist. And fortunately, I was successful in getting an assistant job. But all is not lost. You do not need to have an assistant job to get onto clinical training. There are plenty of people that don't. But what these people often have is supervision from a psychologist in some capacity, because they help you think about things in a different way. So that is my first top tip, is ask for supervision from anybody that can help, really. Ideally a clinical psychologist, or even a trainee if that's something that they want to do, or a forensic psychologist, health psychologist, anybody that is trained in psychology, ideally. Tip number 2 is to use reflective models. If you've watched any of my other videos, which I highly encourage you to do, if you've watched any of my other ones, you'll know that I am absolutely obsessed with reflective models and reflective portfolios. I'm absolutely obsessed. So reflective models are really good because they're frameworks with prompts that can help you think about your experiences in a different way. So it asks you lots of different ones. There are loads available, and they ask you lots of different questions about, for example, in the Gibbs model, and there is a full free webinar on my YouTube channel on the Gibbs model, if that's something that you want to look at, or the Brookfield model. There's Johns, there's Driscoll, there's loads. But for example, in the Gibbs model, which is very well known, you sort of look at what was good about the experience, what was bad about the experience, what thoughts and emotions seem significant to you, what you would do differently next time, what you could continue to do for next time. So it can help you adjust your practice for future situations. And to be honest, it just gives you that space to really think about a situation that you've been in and an experience that you've had, to really sit and think about it, because we don't often have time to do that in our chronically underfunded services. But trying to make a bit of time for you to be able to think about this stuff is helpful. This is helpful if you can't get clinical supervision with someone, or if you can, it's helpful for both. And it's something I wish I started doing earlier. So I interviewed for Cardiff this year for the doctorate programme, and part of my feedback was that I should look at reflective models, because they can help me make more out of my experience and think differently about it, and be able to phrase it in interviews in a different way. So the earlier you can start doing that, the better, really. So I would definitely start doing that. As I said, see the YouTube channel. There's more information on specific reflective models around. I do a monthly live webinar as well, based on different reflective models. So let me know if you need any help with any of that, then I'm sure I can. So tip number 2 is to use reflective models. Let's move on to tip number 3, which again is one of my ultimate favourite things to do in my life, is to keep a reflective portfolio. It sounds fancier than it is, all right? A reflective portfolio is a folder, okay? It could be a physical folder or a folder on your computer, and it collects your reflections, your reflexive exercises, which could be things like the social graces exercise, or your family scripts, or anything like that. Things you might find interesting or important. Could be news articles, could be literature, could be a paper that you've read, it could be anything really. Any notes from any webinars, any CPD activities, that sort of stuff. You can keep it in there, so then all of your experience as a support worker, you've got that, you've got reflections on it, you've got stuff that you've learned, you've got relevant literature, you've got everything in there, like in a concise place that you can think, okay, well, this is my support worker experience, and it will help you make most out of it. It will help you understand it in a different way. So keep a reflective portfolio. It's absolutely the most helpful thing that I've done in my 10 months of being an assistant. I wish I'd done it earlier. Like I said, I graduated with my master's in 2016, so I've been working for 4 years after my master's, and I wish I'd done it from the absolute start, because then now when I prepare for interviews and things and I try and make the most out of my experience, I have to rely on my memory of those times, which is not as useful to me always as doing it in the moment. So my absolute advice is to start as soon as possible. I've also done a full webinar on reflective portfolios, and how to reflect in a doctorate application. So I'll link those down in the comments below. But you can, if you subscribe to my channel, then you'll see all the new updates on all the videos there. So tip number 4, seek opportunities. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, seeking opportunities basically means finding out what opportunities there are, what chances there are, what work is going on in your service that you can get involved in. So within your service or your health board, your health trust, or your company that you're working in, there's likely to be some sort of service development project that's ongoing or that is needed. I would talk to your supervisor about this and say, this comes back to being honest with your supervisor and saying, I want to pursue clinical psychology training, and I think I need to develop in research and service development or audit and evaluation, that sort of stuff. Are there any opportunities around that I can get involved in that? Most services will have some sort of action plan that they're working towards. So ask your supervisor if there is an action plan, and if there is, get access to it, have a look through and say, right, one of the points on the action plan is to evaluate all of the psychosocial interventions. I can help out with that. I can do that. I'm a psychology graduate. I can do that. So that's something you could look at doing. Are there any audits? As I said, audits or evaluation projects that are required? Is there any need for any literature reviews? You know, are psychologists trying to develop a new group using a new therapy model that's not been used before? What's the literature on that? Do they need any support with that? Can anybody make time for you to do that? Or can you help with any clinical work? You know, is there any sort of graded exposure or behavioural experiments that you can help out with? Anything like that? And are there any CPD events available to you? You know, if you're a member of the BPS, the pre-qualified group does loads of events. I mean, I'm a little bit biased, but they do loads of events, particularly this year. I mean, I've found this year I've been able to attend so many more events, and loads more of the events have been so useful for pre-qualified psychologists. So there's that sort of stuff. There are so many webinars out there at the moment. You know, being working class in clinical psychology is a really good webinar series that has been going throughout this year that I will link in the comments as well. There's loads. There's absolutely loads out there. So have a little look. Even searching clinical psychology on YouTube, you can come up with lots of stuff. But it's important that you ask for that time. You know, as a support worker, you're unlikely to be in that position forever. You're unlikely to be in that role forever, even if you're on a permanent contract. You know, lots of people that get mental health support worker roles are trying to pursue the clinical psychology training program, or go on to, you know, develop their careers, or qualify as a PWP or something like that. So it's a kind of a development role. So it's okay to ask for the time. Your supervisor will be honest with you back if they can't give you the time. But you should read your contract, because usually, for example, in my role as an assistant, my supervisors are very happy for me to take half a day to a day-ish of CPD per week, or per month, depending on what the workload's up to. But it's important that you ask for that time and seek out the opportunities. In my first ever support worker role in the weight management service, we were working with a clinical psychologist who saw the need for a therapy group based on ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. And I sort of said, oh, well, I'd really like to get involved in that. We were just, you know, chatting over lunch one day. She mentioned it, and I said, great. Is there anything I can do to help? Literature review or anything. So I ended up then getting some work to do, and we delivered this, developed and delivered this ACT therapy group, which was really successful. But also, part of that led to them offering me half of my role to be an assistant psychologist job. Unfortunately, due to some timings and some personal things, I had to leave I had to leave that locality because it was a bit far away from some family stuff. But that's the value, is to seek opportunity. You know, there's value in that. Just find out if there's anything else that you can help with. You know, nobody's going to be angry at you for saying, look, is there anything else I can help you with? No one will be angry at you for that. So definitely be brave and seek out any opportunities that there are. Tip 5 then, peer support groups. So as an AP, we have a specialty peer support group, kind of like a CPD group, I suppose, where we take it in turns to lead. It's a monthly thing. We take it in turns to lead, and we look at different topics. We've had psychologists come and talk to us about different psychotherapeutic models or case studies. We've delivered presentations. We've critiqued journal articles. We've prepared for doctorate interviews together. There's loads. And also, luckily, there's lots of APs in our sort of specialty that can do that, and that are willing and motivated to do that. Not everyone has that, but as a support worker, you're unlikely to be the only support worker in your service or your trust. There'll be similar people in similar positions that might want to meet up and get a bit of support, or you know, people that are trying to pursue the doctorate, that are trying to you know, gain some CPD stuff. So I would definitely try and set up a monthly peer support group if you can. Will your supervisor allow you to take one afternoon a month, or you know, afternoon or a day a month for a peer support group or a CPD group? Ask them. You know, there's no harm in asking. And actually, it looks really good for your manager as well, to be honest, because they can say, yeah, we are supporting our staff with CPD, and we're making sure that they feel valued, and we're helping them progress. So that's, you know, there's something in it for them as well. You could use the time to do anything. You can plan that with your group, but you can discuss anonymised case studies, reflective models, the journey to the doctorate, challenges in the NHS, reflective exercises. There's so much stuff that you can talk about. Underrepresented groups and things like that. You can talk about so much stuff. But the important thing is to try and set this up. That's a top tip from me, because I was one of the only support workers in that service, but not within the trust. And I wish I'd been a bit bolder and suggested, oh, actually, could we start a peer support group? Because I think that would really help with my development. And I think they would have been supportive of that. So it depends on your service, but it's something I'd recommend. And you could have an assistant or trainee or a clinical psychologist, come and talk to you about different things that could be helpful for you. So those are my absolute 5 top tips for you. So number 1 is to ask for supervision. Number 2 is use reflective models. Number 3 is keep a reflective portfolio. And number 4, seek opportunities. 5, peer support groups. So I hope those top tips have been helpful. If you are interested in getting involved, you can follow us on all of the social media down below. And let me know in the comments what topics that you want me to cover. What other topics do you want for 5 top tips, our new series? What do you want to see? Let me know. And thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate any comments or any feedback that you've got. And don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much. And we'll see you soon. Bye.